when your career ends, Tom, and you're, how long does it figure out, what's next, or is it kind of like a shock to the system? My hockey career, I've been doing this all my life, is now over, and now I have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, it was a strange time. I was like a lot of guys. We really didn't prepare ourselves, and we didn't make a lot of money back then either. So it's not like we had a huge nest sitting there to sit around for a couple of years and figure out what you want to do. And I remember like thinking back how naive I was too, because I'd hurt my back and I was at the end of my career. So I'd gone through like 2 or 3 years of having back problems. So when I did have 2 years left on my contract, and we spread that out over time, but really that wasn't much to live off. Especially seeing we spread it out over time. So like then when it finally ended for me, I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, it's over. Well, I should have said to myself, okay, this is finally it. I should have prepared for the 2 or 3 years that I knew it was coming to an end. So there's no time to sit around for me. I had a young family. We didn't, again, we had a little bit of an income coming in for the next 4 or 5 years, I think it was. And, but I had an agent friend of mine from New York, a guy by the name of Larry Roush, really nice gentleman. And at that time, there's really only like maybe 20 or 30 agents representing players. And he had spoken to me about being more of a recruiter for him. So I was in LA at the time. That's where we settled at first when I retired. So I flew out to New York, spent the weekend sitting around about what we were going to do, what are his philosophies. And I pretty much committed to him that I was going to work with him. But on the flight home, it's a long flight. You get 5 or 6 hours sitting in a plane. I started thinking to myself, like, why am I going to work for somebody else? I've got this, I was a captain or assistant captain of every team I ever played on. I won Players Award, Unsung Hero. I knew all these guys in the game, understood the game and the language and how people, the culture of the game. And I said, I just feel like I'm bringing so much to the table. Like he's going to be my boss. And he's a fantastic guy. But I thought, well, why am I going to have somebody else telling me what to do and taking a big chunk of the profits? So I got home. I said, I'm going to do it myself. And it's funny. I tell people too, it's like, I'm glad that I was smart enough to know what to do. But if I was any smarter, I would have scared myself to death, right? Because like, what do you do? You're starting a whole new business and you don't know. But again, I look, it's one of those things that when I speak to people in a motivational way, I say like, the people say, well, what was your plan B? Well, I said, well, plan B was finish plan A. It's the old saying, like, if you really want to, take the island in the battle, there's some war saying, if you really want to win the battle on the island, you burn the boats, right? So when you get to the island, you burn the boats. There's no way to get off the island. You've got to win that battle. And that was really the same way it was for me as an agent. I know it's kind of dramatic, but I had to pay the bills, right? I had a young family at home. So I transitioned right into the agent business. And I was, again, I keep going back to this, but that kind of true grit life growing up on the farm where, that work ethic is showing up. And it's the same way as an agent. I found it was just, I was getting all no's at first. I'm going out there trying to recruit players, and parents are saying, Tom, we love you, but you've never negotiated a contract before. You've never represented a player. And I just kept going. And eventually you start getting your first player that's maybe a 9th round draft pick. And then he's playing on the team. And then you get a teammate of his that's a 4th round draft pick. And then that, 4th round draft pick becomes a 2nd round draft pick, and then a first. And I was very fortunate because when I was in LA and Wayne Gretzky was there, his agent, Mike Barnett, we'd gotten to know each other pretty good. And he was on his own just representing Mike, and then he got brought into IMG. So I would see him out on the road everywhere, and especially out in Western Canada. At that time, a lot of the agents didn't want to go out there because you're going out in the middle of winter to places like Moose Jaw and Swift Current and Swift, all these tiny little towns, and it's freezing. They would actually, when you go to places like Moose Jaw, you would actually have to leave your car running during the game. If you didn't leave the car running, it was going to freeze up. So all the cars in the parking lot and you go to the hotel, they give you an extension cord to the hotel because you could plug your car in to keep the engine warm during the winter. I rented a car the first time, a tiny little Mustang or something like that. I was driving from the Regina airport to Moose Jaw. I can't remember, it was an hour and a half drive or something. It was so cold that I would either have, and it was a smaller car, I would either have to keep the heat on my feet so they wouldn't freeze and let the windshield frost over, or then I'd have to switch and so I could see, I'd have to take the heat the other way. They wouldn't do both. Like, it wasn't strong enough to do both. So funny stories like that, it was a great experience. Eventually got to the point where I got hired by IMG, and that was, again, now I'm representing guys. Like Brian Berard was the first overall pick in the draft, was a client of mine. Got to the point where one year, I think I had just myself, it's 6 of the top 30 picks in the draft one year, and that was the year Brian Berard got. So it really, because again, you start off similar to going to Northern Michigan. You start off being the worst team in the country, and then in your fourth year, you're the number one ranked team in the country. So same thing with me starting off as being an agent. I had no clients. And then, 4 or 5 years into it, now I've got all these top draft picks. So it was a great experience. Loved it. The recruiting got a little tougher. That's the main reason I got out of it. The recruiting when I recruited like a player like Berard, he was like 16 years old when I first met him.
Right.
Now to get those top kids like a Brian Berard, you've got to start recruiting them when they're 13 or 14 years old. Just to me, that was kind of just wrong on a lot of levels. I mean, you're going in front of a kid's locker room when he's 13, 14 years old, trying to represent him. So,
yeah.
But it was a blast. So I loved the agent business. It was 22 years, some great experiences, some tough times that, I didn't anticipate I would go through. I had a player that came to me at one point who had been an NHL player who had been sexually abused by his junior coach. He was now, as part of his healing thing, he was coming out with that whole thing. That was a huge story up in Canada. And I remember when he first told me, I'm a farm boy from Canada. My experience with sexual abuse was just I was lucky to just not say too much and say, listen, I'm here with you and we'll get through it. And the NHL and the NHLPA were fantastic. They had put together a program with doctors to deal with, substance abuse and all these different kind of issues, including knee. So they really took the lead on that. Brian Berard went through, he had a horrific eye injury and almost pretty much lost the vision in his eye, had to go through all that stuff. So things that you didn't anticipate that you're going to have to go through, that real learning experiences, both from the legal side, from the personal side. So it was a good experience.
You were kind enough to, we had our class this past semester from Manhattanville College, the Sport Business Management program, and we had a class specifically about agents, role of an agent, and we had you on and heard a lot of those stories, and it was you were kind enough to do that, and we appreciate that. Would like to say, so last year you participated in a TV show that's been around for a long time, Survivor. I think, am I correct? You were the oldest contestant ever on the show?
Well, not ever. I was the oldest contestant I think they'd had in the last 10 years.
Oh, okay. How did that happen? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I tell you, this whole process for me, so my company being True Grit Life and writing the book and everything, it's really, part of my big thing that I say to people is to try to get better all the time. And don't ever sit there and say, well, I'm too old or I'm too heavy or wrong skin color to do whatever your dream or your passion is. What first happened was, I think it's Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer, owns a piece. I believe I'm correct in this, Amazing Race and Survivor and Big Brother and all that. So he had approached the NHL. He's a big hockey fan. In fact, I think he's going to be a part owner in Seattle, the team there. He had approached the NHL about just getting 2 former NHL players that were same age, they were friends, and getting them on Amazing Race. So they didn't just approach me. They were asking a lot of guys, but they knew I was really in this conditioning thing and everything. So they came to me, and I get in trouble when I say this, but there's nobody else my age that was in shape to do it. Or else they didn't have a passport, which you needed a U.S. passport. So they didn't work out with Amazing Race. So then they mentioned about, actually we came back at it again. Well, what about Survivor? Just kind of more throwing a line in the water, like seeing, and I really looked at Survivor. I watched the game and I go, geez, I want to do this. Like when I do my speaking and everything, I talk about discipline and devotion and dedication. When you talk about Survivor, it's all backstabbing and no integrity and everything. Right. So I really wasn't too thrilled about it. But then I talked to some more people I respected a lot, and it came to the realization that this would be a great opportunity. Is another showing people that listen, just like, you don't just talk, Tom, about saying just do whatever you want to do. Don't let something hold you back. You go do it, right? Yeah. So I said, okay. So we had to put together a tape, an audition tape to start with. And then if they like that, then they get on the phone with you. And, some of the producers were big hockey fans and everything. So it helped there. And then when I went out then they bring you out to LA for casting. And, you got a lot of young kids that are trying to get there. They're really nervous, they're huge Survivor fans. So when they go to sit in front of Jeff Probst and say the host, they're really nervous, they're uptight and everything. So I walked in, I'm 60 years old. I don't care. I've been so lucky, right? Because I'm around guys like Wayne Gretzky and Phil Esposito and, done TV work and all this kinds of stuff. So, in front of Jeff, I had huge respect for Jeff. He's a great guy, but it's not like I'm going to be intimidated by him. So I walk in and, he's a tiny little guy sitting on the couch and I'm just towering over him. I'm going like, you're mine now. You're going to be called Proby from now on, all this kind of stuff. And the casting director, like he had told us, he prepped us all, like, like be yourself, let your personality goes. And so he's sitting in the background going, well, like he was all fired up because I was giving it to him good. At one point, he turned to these two women from CBS were in the room, and he turned to the two women and they said, well, what do you think of him? And the one woman goes, it's very polite and ladylike and everything. He goes, I like him. He's confident, but he's not cocky, And the other woman turns and goes, oh, no, he's totally cocky. He's 100%, which is kind of what you want, right? I mean, you're pouring it on. So it was a blast. It was, but it was weird stuff like when they bring you for casting, you're there for 5 days and you're in the hotel and it's other potential. There's like 19 other potential players in the game, and they don't want you to have any interaction with those people except in front of the camera. So for 5 days, you're in the same hotel, sit at the same restaurant. You've got to sit at different tables. You can't talk to each other the whole time. Wow. So it's kind of weird. And then they do that, and they kind of trick you a little bit. Like, we'll be back to you in a couple of weeks. We'll let you know the results. It went for months before they got back to you.
Oh wow!
And finally, and then finally, I think they want to keep it a secret who's on the show as long as possible. So they finally call and let me know that I was on the show. So it was good. But that time when they take you out to Fiji and drop you off on the island, it's kind of like, holy smokes, I'm actually doing this, right? So,
all right, I can imagine. So your agent background actually helped you a little bit when you were negotiating or whatever the term was for that, right?
Yes. Yeah, they knew I'd been an agent, obviously, and when they sent the contract, they even said to me, like I said, we know you're an agent, so obviously you're going to tear this up a little bit. So it was a 125-page document, and they would do. They're pretty smart. Like they would put things like in the last, like second to last page, they would throw in clauses just randomly that, like, Survivor would end up being your agent for the next 2 years. And I crossed it. In fact, the lawyer did was pretty funny. He, I would catch those things, and you could tell he was kind of getting a kick out of it because everybody else, all the other people, would just sign it as it was. We finally got to the point where I think he emailed me. He said, "Listen, this has been great." He says, "We can't go any farther. This is the farthest we've ever gone in a contract." Because most people haven't even tried to negotiate it. So probably my ego was getting more of a thrill out of it than anything.
That's classic. Would you do anything differently on the show?
Yeah, you know what? I've been asked that a lot. Like, I really believe that if you watch the winners, there's so many different ways to win the game, different styles of play. Like the gentleman that just won last night, this Tony guy, just totally is a great guy. He's a cop from New Jersey, but he just would backstab anybody. Like, he's a real family guy. But when it comes to the game of Survivor, he would say, listen, here's how I'm going to play. I'm going to backstab everybody. And he's won the game twice now. He's won $3 million doing it. But there's been other people that play a little bit more of a character game. Like, at some point, you've got to mislead people. Like, on a blind side, you've got to make people believe that you're going to vote off another person where you're really going to vote them off, right? So that's part of the game. That's part of the strategy of the game. But I really wanted to go out there and think to myself, okay, it really is a 1 in 20 chance to win. You could be, there's people that got voted off from around me, before me, whatever, that were great players and very easily could have won the game. So I thought, okay, at some point, if I'm going to get voted off, I want to be able to stand up and be really proud of how I played the game. That I didn't come across as some guy that didn't have integrity, or I wanted to come across as being that loyal guy that played with integrity, played the game hard though, treated people fairly. But it's, when you're kind of raised in Canada, this is my upbringing, that you treat everybody with respect. The people you're playing against, the people you're playing with, the coaches, parents, kids in school, everything. When it comes time to win a game, you're going to play a game. You play to win. And if you have to hurt somebody else to do it, you do it. It's kind of a rough way of looking at it. Yeah. So that's kind of the mentality I wanted to have. And I was lucky. I remember when I got voted off, I stood up and I told everybody, hey, listen, great to meet you. Go all out every day. Like, I kind of prepared a little bit of what I wanted to say, because I was one of 3 people that was potentially going to get voted off. So I walked away thinking, you know what, I wouldn't change too much. I played the way I wanted to play, and it was good.
Good for you.